Yeah, I believe in you. I don't believe in lucky sevens. I'm not sure about my nest, but I know I believe in angels. I believe in happiness.
Well, good evening, everybody. It is wonderful to see all of you here. I am so excited. Let me tell you, what I'm doing down here in my little corner pocket right here, I am usually logging in to social medias just to make sure that we're actually broadcasting where we're supposed to be broadcasting, because this is a show of one. And I do not have a little PA on the other side of my computer doing it for me. Maybe one day, who knows? It's God's story, right? I'm on the path that I'm supposed to be on, and we'll see. I mean, hey, if you're, when the big guys out there, I have a love for the camera. I can read news all day long. Just call me up. I'm here for you. Anyway, so I'm checking social media, make sure that we're running, and we actually are on both YouTube and Facebook. So please stop by, say hello. We'd love to chat with you. And without any further ado, from Vista Front Partners, our beloved, my personally absolutely loved financial advisor is here to chat with us. Whoa, tonight, and that's a whole lot of you. Hold on.
All right.
There we go. It's
All
great
right.
to see you. How are you?
It's like Wayne's World. I'm in and out. Like, whoa. So yeah, I've got I'm trying to like adjust where my phone is, because I'm on my side I look kind of normal, and I guess on your side I'm probably like inflated, like a big giant balloon at the Macy's Day Parade.
Well, maybe for a second, but I fixed it. Now we're
All
nice
right.
and balanced, and I can see you there. And you're out of Virginia, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm in Virginia. Our company headquarters is in Lexington or Frankfort, Kentucky. So we handle clients from different states, and a lot in this region, but in elsewhere. But yeah, I'm in Virginia. It's quite nice here today. While everybody else has had like scorching weather the last 2 or 3 days, I've been in the low 70s and then in the 50s at night, and it is right in my comfort zone. It feels like fall, but I know we're gonna heat up here probably in about a week, and I'm gonna see like 85, 90 again.
So when I was growing up in New Jersey, and we're the tri-state area, so Metuchen, New Jersey, just outside of New York City, sort of in the northern corner, but not too far north. Anyway, we'd have what we would call an Indian summer in especially August. And I can remember as a kid, it almost happened like clockwork. We would have the first 2 weeks of August would be hot, and then it would cool off. We get that one rain that after the rain, it just stayed cool. And sometimes those last 2 weeks, the first week in September and the last week of August, would just be like scorching hot. And that's what we call our Indian summer. For us, it only lasts for 2 weeks, but you're not too far away from the Shenandoah Valley and some of those beautiful areas of Virginia, right?
Yeah, so we get the same thing, but usually our last gasp of summer comes about mid-September, before you go into October. And it feels kind of nice, because you're like, you're ready for fall, but then that last little summer blast, if you have a pool, you get a chance to use your pool one last time before you have to shut it down. And so it's kind of nice. But yeah, I'm near the Shenandoah Valley and kind of in the center of the Appalachians, and not terribly far from North Carolina if you want to go through the Fancy Gap down there and see all the change in the fall colors. And so I'm kind of right in the sweet spot. I really love fall. I'll tell you why. I'm colorblind. Mm-hmm. So for a couple of weeks during the fall, when everything starts to really get colorful, I literally start seeing colors I don't see at all year. And it is so cool. It's like a kaleidoscope. And then everything's gray. So it's kind of a catch-22. I love it. And then it's like, okay, it's gone.
Yeah.
But I try to make a couple of, I try to go on like a couple of little country drives where I can go take pictures just around here, just to maybe hit a couple of mountaintops and look out over the valley and things like that. So it's kind of nice.
I really fell in love with fall probably in my teen years. My very first boyfriend was an artist, and he was about 4 years older than me. So we met in high school, but it was at the end of his senior year, and then he went on into college. So he was taking some of those cooler art courses, and one of them, of course, was photography of multiple levels. And he was studying in, I think it was black and white photography. So we would just go out for hikes and climb on top of, small little mountains that we had in North Carolina in the fall. And it was amazing to see just black and white photography, what the changing of the colors looks like. It is absolutely amazing with all the different shades of gray. Not, I'm sure seeing it in full color is absolutely wonderful as well. And I'm beginning to go a little bit colorblind, not totally, but things are just not as bright as they used to be. So I remember when I was that age and we would go climbing up into the mountains, it was just breathtaking to look at all the vibrant colors. So that's really cool that you get a little pop something special,
Yeah, and I guess when you kind of go through something like that, you really appreciate the memories of what you saw, and the pictures you took. And there's a couple of places I really like to go and take pictures, in the spring and in the fall. So hopefully I'll be able to pop up on the mountainsides here next few weeks and see what the world looks like.
So did you do anything like that? Like, who was your, let's get more of an intimate view of JC. Who was your first love, and what did you really enjoy doing with her, right? Her, not him.
Let's see. I guess as far as like, well, probably the first time that I really kind of thought, love was love. I got engaged. It was a girl named Wendy. And some of the things that we would do, we would just go down to the park near Radford. We were near the New River. Both went to college there. I was in grad school. She was an undergrad. Just a lot of things going to the park, a lot of outdoor stuff, tennis, walking, fishing, just being outside, nice drives through the mountains. Things like that were really, really awesome. And I do remember a couple of those drives. I don't even remember where we were at, but just going around this 2-lane road, it's a curvy thing. And then just seeing this really gorgeous river flowing around, and it just sort of reminded me, like, I'm such a nerd. Like, I loved history and I still do, but I would think back to, like, I wonder if the pioneers traveled along the same route where this road is, to stay close to a river, stay close to a water source, and know their direction where they were going. But yeah, just a lot of things like that, some outdoorsy things. And it's kind of fun I wasn't into like a lot of hiking, and she really was. So it kind of got me into doing some things I normally didn't do.
Oh, that's very cool. You said fishing. I remember I was dating somebody who really loved fishing, and this was after my first boyfriend. So I was still living at home, and I was dating this guy, and I thought he was a really nice gentleman type guy. And he's like, "Hey, I know where there's a pond. Let's go fishing." And it was a Saturday, so I'm like, I'm dressed for fishing. I'm ready. I have my fishing pole. I got everything with me because I also love to just fish. I don't know what it is. So many people think that it's boring as hell, but I'm an interesting personality because as a kid, my favorite pastime was watching golf and guessing how close they got on the green to the hole. So anyway, so we go out fishing, and I was horrified because he took me out there fishing. He didn't want to fish. He just wanted to purely make out with me. And I'm like,
okay.
like, but we're fishing. He's like, no, forget the fishing. So he brought me back home, and I told him that I couldn't see him anymore because my mother didn't like him. And he actually had the balls enough to go, well, let me talk to her. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, she's indisposed. You can't talk to her.
Wow. Wow. Now that's a memory.
She never knew anything about that. I never told her about that. But I was just like, oh, you can't invite me out fishing and then just want to make out with me the whole time.
Wow. So did you ever finally go fishing?
On my own? Yeah.
That's so funny. Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, that's not the kind of fishing he had in mind, I guess.
No.
But no, when I was little, I kind of liked doing that, and I was a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout when I was a kid. And so, yeah, I just always this is kind of funny, but in my Envoy, I keep a rod reel in my tackle box in the back. So in case I'm driving somewhere and I just want to stop and fish, like, I don't care. Honestly, I could care less if I catch anything. As a matter of fact, I'm throwing anything back that I catch, because if I want seafood, I'll go to Red Lobster. But but used to, I would like catch trout or whatever and clean it and grill it and all that. But that's a hassle. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but it's kind of, but I still enjoy just sitting by the river or a lake and just I don't know, just me, the blue sky, and God, just nature, and just it's peaceful. So but I still do that. So that's kind of nerdy, I guess, But I'll do that sometimes. Just stop along the roadside, like, hey, this looks like a good place to throw a line in and waste about half hour.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, last week was certainly a market ride that we all needed to just go and vegetate somewhere. That was a rough market, but I looked up what the closing bell brought us today, and it looks like the NASDAQ is up. It looks like things closed on a little bit of an upturn. What are you seeing on your end, because you study it day in, day out?
Well, one of the things that I pay a lot of attention to, that last time I came on, that was the day the market dropped 1,000 points, a little over 1,000. And I was trying to talk about how those are days. Look at those days as opportunity days. So the market had dropped, but it's bounced back from where it was. So, in a course of 3 weeks, did everybody lose their shirt? No, everything's sort of like on an even plane now. So that's the volatility, and that's sort of why you look at those days as opportunity. But one of the things that I watch in particular, especially when you come off of days like that, and then some volatility a little bit the week before, where we sold off a little bit the week before, and then the volatility after that, is what's called the VIX, the VIX, and that's a volatility index. And on that day when it would drop 1,000 points, it was up to like 60 something, which it hasn't been that high since the pandemic and everything panic sold. So that's a really high number for that volatility index. I like to look at it, and like everything's like normal, calm, stable around 15, 17, somewhere in that range there. So the lower it is, the more calm everything is. So in your teens is pretty calm. So that volatility index over the next couple of days had dropped a lot. So that told me that, okay, that really was a lot of panic selling that day. So some of that panic coming out of the market, and now more level-headed decisions are being made. And that volatility index, that number's come down a lot, almost down back to normal. So that's sort of what I watch to see where that goes, whether the market's going to go on a wild ride up or down. Either way, I mean, that's the volatility. So, yeah, I mean, we're going into an election season. We know the Federal Reserve is going to be dropping rates on the next meeting in September. So we sort of know the path forward. And, as long as nothing crazy happens, earnings season's dwindling down, and, it was okay. Some corporations gave negative guidance for the second half of the year, when it comes to expected sales, but that's because of fear of recession. And so there's still that little bit of possibility of that lingering out there. But for now, things have sort of calmed down. And when you see a spike down like that, opportunities to buy what you like, that purse you liked at 100 is now at 75. So.
Well, I mean, absolutely. And it's an election year. It always seems like there's added volatility in an election year, especially as we gain closer to third quarter. Now that we've had a crazy election year, it's not even a year complete yet. But with Kamala Harris, she's out there and she's now talking about some of her focuses of what she would like to see. And one of the things was to price fix on food. Now, that is, as a lot of us know, that is not a good recipe for the economy, for many things. It's, some people will say that's more of a communist type view of creating bread lines and things like that we saw back, in the Great Depression era. And nobody wants to go back there, but
not just that era, but like in the Soviet era during the 80s. Um, Price controls were put on by the Carter administration on certain things like gas and things like that in the 70s, and we saw where gas lines went and people rationing and gas stations going out of business. Um, Price controls are still being used today in a lot of countries like Venezuela, and certain sectors in some of the South American countries like Brazil. And all we've seen from that is the destruction of commerce, destruction of demand, and the destruction of business and jobs.
Yeah.
And we've seen inflation spike from these efforts. So that is, price controls have never been a good idea, and they're not going to be a good idea now. No matter, I know it sounds great, but it doesn't end well.
It doesn't. And then you look at those areas where they have had those issues. We have a lot of Venezuelan people that have come across the border. We've
Mhm.
had a lot of people from other countries where they have that type of situation that she seems to be promoting as her focus, if you will. So it just seems to me, as someone that doesn't deal in finances day in, day out like you do, that the volatility won't end this year from what I'm seeing. Is that what you're seeing as well?
I mean, it's likely to spike again at some point. Um, I never count out the volatility. There's always those black swan events that we talked about, like one show before about some unforeseen thing. But yeah, I don't think volatility is going away. It may have cooled off a little bit, but we'll see it again. it's
Yeah,
it's not hiding. It's in plain sight in our news headlines. So it's just a matter of sometimes, is Wall Street going to be picky, or is it Main Street that's mostly picky? Because
sure.
unfortunately, there's a big disconnect. It used to not be this way, but there's a big disconnect between Main Street and Wall Street. And Main Street might be hurting economically, and Wall Street might be thriving, for one reason or another. So, yeah, that disconnect started quite a long time ago, and probably in the early '70s, early to mid '70s, you started seeing more of a disconnect from, what's good for Main Street's good for Wall Street, and it's just not that anymore.
Right. So now you have educated us in the past about, when we have times like this in the market where there's a lot of volatility, there's a lot of companies that have lost some value, but you know that they're going to come back. They're big box, they're larger, more steady companies, that it's a
Mhm.
great time to buy. So what I'm asking, because I know that, there's you do not give any type of insider trading advice or anything, but there are sectors of the market that are doing better than other sectors. If people were interested in doing a little bit of their research before they contact, or possibly after they contact someone like yourself, which sectors is it that it is showing the most steady function at the moment?
Well, as we know, for the last say year and a half, everybody's been piling into technology
Mhm.
because AI is such a big thing. But now we've seen that sort of cool off, and a lot of the companies who have put a lot of money in AI now need to see some return on investment, and they are. But we've seen companies like Nvidia come back, Amazon come back. But even though, I mean, they're still higher than where they were 2 years ago, but they've come back from their highs. I think what people need to consider is this. This is kind of an important thing. Think about what companies are going to do well in a lower interest rate environment. So we know the Federal Reserve is going to be cutting interest rates from the 5.5 range, and it's projected by the end of next year it might be down to around 4. Now, anybody tries to predict the Fed, it's kind of folly, but let's just use that for argument's sake. So what companies are going to be the ones that normally do well? These are going to be small and medium-sized companies that normally have to borrow money to grow and expand. They don't necessarily want to reissue new shares because that dilutes the share price, but they might want to borrow money or issue corporate debt. So um, those types of companies, like smaller and mid-cap companies, will have an opportunity to kind of catch up to where all these top flight companies took off to.
Mhm.
Now, are they going to catch up that high? I doubt it, but but there's plenty of room to run for some of those smaller and mid-sized companies. And it doesn't really necessarily matter what sector per se, because the market is cyclical. So at one point your industrials might do well, at another point your defense sector. And when I say defensive stocks, I don't mean like Raytheon and Northrop Grumman, military stuff. I mean companies that perform well in a recession. Like, people don't stop smoking because times are hard, right? People don't like cut out booze. They don't cut. I mean, you're still going to shave. So, like companies, defensive. A great example of a defensive company would be something like Procter and Gamble, that makes a lot of products we use around the house. You're not going to stop brushing your teeth because the economy's bad, right? So things like that. I mean, if we start going into a recession, those are some of the companies you want to look for. Those defensive type companies that are going to do well in those downturns, because they're going to keep, they're not going to lose business. So more people will look for them, and especially those that pay dividends, because those, as a company pays dividends, it shows that it's a healthy company. It's paying their shareholders back, and I love dividend paying stocks. So those are some things to look for as we go into September and on. And another thing folks at home need to keep in mind: if you haven't bought something like a home or major appliances or a car or something that you would need to finance because you don't like where rates are at, now's the time to start thinking about next year purchases for next year, whether it's middle of next summer or fall, those bigger purchases, because rates are going to come down. So if those are purchases you need to plan, start thinking about those things now, getting a list and prioritizing what you need that you might have to get to refinance, and hopefully get those at a lower rate.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely keep that in mind. Don't let the rates drop and like, oh, hey, I need a new car. Start thinking about those things now and planning for when you're going to budget for those types of things.
So, I know that has been the buzz in the news feed, is that the rates are, the feds are planning on reducing rates.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any type of situation to where they wouldn't, and they would, navigate away from that narrative right now that the rates are dropping?
I don't see it of any reason right now coming. I know that, inflation, people are still pissed about inflation because everything's at least 20% higher than where it was 2 years ago. But that month over month and year over year number has come down a lot. Now, if they were to get another bad reading showing producer or consumer at the consumer level or producer level, those costs spiked again, well, they might hold off and not lower. But we've already gotten enough indication. I think probably it's sort of baked in. It's going to happen in September. But as we go into fall, if the economy starts slowing, that's when they're going to need to continue to cut rates. I guess if I had to guess, I would say we probably only get one cut this year, and they probably wouldn't do anything until next year after inauguration, when they meet and see where the inflation numbers are coming in and what they think their next step might be. But that's the only thing I could think that wouldn't halt them, is if we got some sort of bad number.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they raised pretty quickly, and they've left it there for a while, and some people are already speculating they should have cut in July. That's one of the things that led to a lot of volatility we've seen over the last month, is the fact that they didn't. And then the jobs numbers came in worse than expected. So that sort of showed like, hey, we're starting to see movements in the job market here. That's not good. So should we be cutting? But, inflation is a bear. It really is. And if you start seeing price controls, you will see inflation back in a hurry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then they would just have to continue to lower rates even faster, right?
Well, if inflation spikes again,
Yeah.
no, they'd have to raise it. They would have to raise it to combat inflation. But that would be almost disastrous for the economy if price controls came in, and especially they're talking about food, like at your grocery store, we're going to halt the prices. Well, I don't think the people, for politicians, I don't think they probably need an Econ 101 class, some of the folks that talk about this, because the margins on a grocery store, like Kroger, for example, There may be 1.5%, if that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very low margin business. And of course, Walmart can get away with some stuff because they have a huge business of a lot of other things. So when you start seeing more people shopping at Walmart, not your regular grocery stores, that's really not a good sign, right? So you've seen a lot of people do that over the inflation spike because they're going there because they can get some better pricing. But that's only because everything else in there, covers the fact that they can lower prices on groceries, so they're gaining market share. But if they were to put price controls on groceries and the inputs on those stores continue to go up, the first businesses to go out of business are your local mom and pop grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
They're gone. They can't survive that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gone. And if you live in a small town like I am, and you have maybe like 3 grocery stores to choose from, and 2 of them are gone, or one of them's gone, then what do you think everybody else is going to do? Rush into those other grocery stores and buy everything off the shelves.
Right.
Food shortages.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start that kind of demand run into stores like that, pricing goes up. And you think $3 for a loaf of bread's bad. Well, when you're paying 5 and 6, that sucks, right? And plus, you got to wait. You may not even get any that day. So that's literally what happens under price controls. It squeezes people out of the market, especially individual small businesses, and those are jobs lost. I mean, that's somebody's son and daughter that don't get ballet shoes and football equipment for high school, things like that. I mean, that's literally what happens. There was a really interesting story out of this. I think it was somewhere in Texas. There was this little small town, and it had 2 grocers, 2 small local owned grocers, and then Walmart moved in. And this is one of the reasons I don't like to shop too much at Walmart. I know a lot of people love it, and that's awesome, fine. I don't boycott anything, but it ran those 2 after like 2 or 3 years. Those 2 stores couldn't compete.
Mm-hmm.
They were small, right? They were tiny, but they went out of business. And about 2 years after that, Walmart decided they would be better served moving their store 45 minutes away, where they had more foot traffic. So they moved that store, and some of the workers actually transferred and went with them and had to move if they could afford it. But when they up and moved, well, that town had 0 grocery stores, 0. It also didn't have a hardware store that went out of business, and 2 or 3 other things, right? So, Walmart holds a lot of power, and them and Costco would probably gain a lot of market share,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not what America is. We don't need to be eliminating small businesses, which is what price controls in any sector eventually does.
That's a very strong point. I really enjoyed the visual that you created there, because you're absolutely right. You have that small town, and just like you said, Walmart comes in, the small mom and pop stores, the small grocery store, the small hardware store, they all close because they can't compete with Walmart, and then Walmart moves. So what do those people do? Because now you have rising costs in gas to be able to drive 45 minutes to where Walmart moved to, and drive 45 minutes back. I mean, that's incredible. And
increase your gas prices by 50% on top of that. It's not good.
No, it's not good. And there are small towns here in the United States where it's just not feasible. People just cannot do that. So I'm hoping for the very best. While we're on the topic of politics for a minute, and I don't lean one way or the other. I know you don't lean one way or the other either. We just want what's best. Insane would be good. What's best insane for the country. But it is absolute insanity of what's going on out there. So the Democratic National Convention started today, and it's in Chicago. And boy, oh boy, I'm going to share my screen to a couple of these websites out here, because I think most people have already heard about it, but just in case you are at work and you missed it. So here's great idea number 1, which, hold on, let me bring it up on the screen. Great idea number 1 is Planned Parenthood has put up a giant IUD, an inflatable IUD out there for everybody to take a look at, but they're also providing abortions, for free, vasectomies for free, and IUDs for free. So if you feel the need that you really, really need to go and get an IUD paid for by the DNC, hey, there you go. Just go ahead and go up to Chicago. This is crazy. I mean,
Wow.
come on.
Do these people know how to party or what?
Well,
It's a great, and I saw, I guess I guess I was a protest or a parade or whatever, and people were dressed up as the abortion pill. They had the bodysuits on with the names of the different abortion pills, and they were walking around the streets and dancing. I thought, my God, wow,
well, you know
wow.
what? And this is, my main thought here of how I really, and I know it would be a civil war, but I really would love to see the dissolution of both sides. Get rid of the Democrats, get rid of the Republicans, and can we just start over? Because just because the DNC is in Chicago, and I brought this picture up here, it's on a website that I'm looking for. I believe this is reported on Fox News. It's Chicago businesses boarded up, bracing for protests ahead of the DNC. So that this morning, in fear of rioters, you can see Staples here is all boarded up, and those little red signs on it says Staples, yes, we're still open. Isn't that like your sign? Can I just throw back to Bill Engvall for a minute? Isn't
Yeah,
that your sign that
you're,
maybe something's wrong here? I mean,
yeah,
riots because you
yeah.
have your national convention in that city, no matter if you are left or right. And then right, you're no better. You are no freaking better. Look at this. So I should have just shared all these to my screen right away. The Republicans are carrying around, here we go, you ready for it? Sample cups, like what you get at the doctor's office. I wish I could make that bigger for you guys to see. Let me see if I click on it. It goes over to X. Can I? Yes. Do you see that? That is a man holding a sample cup, and it says JD Vance sperm. If they're sample cups pretending that they're carrying around sperm because Republicans have their babies. Like I don't even get this one. But
I wonder. Sometimes you got to wonder if people are just planted in to show the most ridiculous things. Because I'd like to think a normal person wouldn't walk around doing this stuff
I mean,
on
why?
either side. You know, it's,
Why?
but
Why?
if that is true, then JD Vance has been very busy lately.
Yeah, filling up all those cups. He's got little old ladies running after him just to fill up their cup.
He, he he's got to be exhausted. Just that's just disgusting. But that is disgusting. Why would anybody even pretend they're walking around with something like that?
No way. No
Uh,
way. And I mean, but then you look at okay, so you look at the Democrats there today and throughout, I guess until Thursday, you go to Chicago, they'll give you a free abortion, they'll give you a free IUD, they'll give you a free vasectomy, which seems counterproductive to growing more Democrats.
oh,
Um,
those well, they'll give those who walk across the border the right to vote. I mean, that's honestly they're trying to do that in cities. Some
yeah,
states have passed laws to allow illegal immigrants to vote.
right. But you know what? If I was an illegal immigrant and I came over here, oh yeah, Ken's on here and he's like, what? Yeah, Ken, for real. If I walked across the border and I was from Venezuela, I was from any of the countries that we were just talking about that were experiencing food lines and we're experiencing some of the things that we have some of our politicians saying that they would like to put into place for this country because they think it might be good for inflation and bring down prices. Yeah, no, it would crash the entire country. Why would they then vote for it? They're
I don't. Some people, I don't know. It reminds me of that line from Batman. Some people just want to watch the world burn. I don't get it. You know what's upset me the most? I'm going to watch the convention this week too, and a couple of things, just like random thoughts here. Joe Biden drops out, which he was sort of forced out, and I sort of see why. I think we all know why.
yeah,
Um, Kamala Harris takes the reins and will be the nominee. She ran against Biden 4 years ago and like called him a racist during the debate. The only person that got her to shut up and actually ran her out was Tulsi Gabbard, who they ran her out of the Democrat Party. Kamala Harris was the first one out of the primary race because she got less than 1%. No one liked her. No one wanted her. So now, without even going through a primary herself, she's the one that now everybody's like fawning over. I don't buy it. And then the choice that she picked for VP of all places was Minnesota, which they know they're going to win. So if she wanted to actually be in play, why not choose Shapiro from Pennsylvania? That would have been a strong pick. He's more of a moderate. So, but then there's the fact that they kind of kowtow to that anti-Israel, anti-Jewish portion of their elect, which is the loudest part of their electorate. I'm sure it's not the vast majority of Democrats. I mean, I know a lot of Democrats around here. I don't know one that dislikes Jews or Israel. They kind of think that's a little weird, but they have the audacity to call the other side weird for whatever reason. But so she picks the guy from Minnesota who has actually talked about socialism, who actually let cities burn during the riots, and she comes in and sets up funds to get people out of prison, right? After they burned down parts of Minnesota. But she didn't. So I'm so upset at the Democrat Party because I want normalcy in this country. They had an opportunity to give us the guy from Pennsylvania, which they didn't, or Kelly from Arizona, more of a moderate. They didn't pick him. How about Warner from Virginia, a strong moderate? But no, we don't get any of these people that are common sense, middle of the road. They give us a socialist and somebody who's touting communist economic ideology. I don't understand this. This is not. It's almost like they want to lose.
But it's neck and neck.
And I don't understand that at all. How is that possible?
How do we go 3+ years of nobody likes her, lowest ratings, oh, we can't stand her, word salad, cackling cum? Like, how do we go 3+ years of we don't like the girl to now she's my queen and I'm voting for her? How do we get there?
I don't know.
The media is the country like this. We look like idiots.
Well, the media gaslights people, and I think big tech sort of helps. So when everybody said, remember that Kamala was the border czar, and then all of a sudden the media is like, she was never the border czar. I don't know where that came from. And then you go to look it up on Google, it's hard to find. Well, we know damn well she was. And now people had screenshot this stuff before, showing the headlines all over Twitter or X, right? So you can see all this. And I don't buy the fact that like on day one, this is what I'm going to do. It's like, you've been there for like 3.5 years. Don't tell me you're day one. Why did you not do it? Why are you not doing it now? Because you're in charge.
Right.
Joe ain't like, so it has to be you.
They made such a strong case that he wasn't sentient and he's aging and all this stuff about how incompetent he was to get rid of him. You know what? I really think there's a part of me in here that thinks that tonight when they have Joe Biden speak for the DNC, that he might kind of do a little bit like what he did in the interview not too long ago, where he's like, yeah, my party, they had an opinion and they really kind of kicked me out of there. And, he said some stuff.
Yeah, I think he's pissed.
You know what? I would be pissed too, because what has she done? She hasn't done anything in 3-something years.
And most of her staff keep quitting on her because they say she's really hard to work for. I don't know how true that is, but I've read that in several places. But, regardless, I mean, I want the best for our country one way or the other. But, I guess the presidential election I'm looking forward to the most is in 4 years from now. So we can kind of move past an era that, and I really honestly think that the Democrat Party, they've gone so far left that they're about to have their come to Jesus moment too, like the Republicans did way back in like the Great Recession, when George W. had dropped the ball on so many things, and the neocons were sort of running the show on everything. And yeah, I mean, I think, the pendulum's going to have to swing back, because the further they run to the left, the more they alienate anybody else in this country.
And the same thing with the right. I don't believe in extremes of either. That has never been good for business. That has never been good for bringing people together. It's a failed model. You can't be extreme right. You can't be extreme left and run a country. It doesn't. You might as well burn it all down and start over, because
Yeah,
that doesn't work. And that's not what our founding forefathers thought of
exactly.
bringing ideas together. It was people all working for the success of the people and the freedoms and the country. And
And
and how did we get here?
well, I was having a similar talk earlier with a friend of mine. And yeah, he said he kind of had the same feeling I did, like the pendulum starting to swing back from the hard left. And the worry was like, I hope it don't swing to the hard right, because I asked him, I said, what's worse, left wing totalitarianism or right wing totalitarianism? Neither sounds like a very good future.
No.
So, yeah, but that's one thing that's frustrated me so much about the Democrat Party this time. Of all the people that they could have chosen, it seems like those moderates, like Manchin, for example, out of West Virginia, more of a moderate. They run this guy out of the party. I mean, he doesn't belong there. And like Mark Warner, I didn't vote for him, but like he's more of a centrist for a Democrat. And I don't know why they wouldn't put somebody like that in, because the Democrats could easily win an election with somebody like Mark Warner.
Mm-hmm.
But we have Kamala Harris.
We do. And, then on the other side of it, we have Trump. And that's a tough one, because he is strong enough to keep some of our enemies in their places where they need to be, but he is unlikable as all heck.
I know.
Just not likable. So he's not going to bring the people together. But then again, he makes decent financial business moves.
Yeah.
But that's what he's been about, is that he came from nothing. He built himself up multiple times, lost it multiple times, he knows business. But you have to have both. You can't just be someone that most people think is just a scathing a-hole, but a decent business guy, or a babbling idiot, and she's gonna make 1% of the people in the country feel warm and fuzzy. Like it's just,
Yeah, they're bringing the joy. I don't know if you noticed that line showing up in all that. The joy is back.
I'm not feeling the joy.
I don't want joy. I want affordable groceries. I want gas at $1.50. But yeah, it's kind of a crazy situation. Same thing happened to the former governor of Kentucky. Really brash, kind of arrogant. He was a great governor, but he got defeated by Bashir, the guy who's governor now, who's wildly popular. Again, a centrist. They could have given us Bashir.
Yeah.
And I think we'd have been okay, one way or the other. However it went, you wouldn't worry terribly, right?
Yeah.
but that's what we have. So,
yeah.
But you know what? This too will pass.
This too will pass. We have Ken Dodge watching, and he's been conversing with us a couple of times, and he did agree with me here. Let it burn, and we'll rebuild it our way. Unfortunately, I've been saying that for a couple of years, and I truly do believe it. I think we're going to come upon a generation that finally pushes back and says enough. And I think the generation to do that are the 20-somethings right now. where they're feeling the inflation, they're feeling the inability to be able to get out of mom and dad's house, to own anything. They're feeling a lot of the burden of these bad policies that have been put into make up what today is today. And that has been happening for the past 20 something years now. And they're feeling it.
That's going to be a strong generation. I think you're right. And one of the things I think from 20 somethings that I've talked to, my nieces and nephews, right? You know how they're feeling, other than, yeah, the economy sucks. And like, they've been lied to by their colleges. They've been miseducated by their colleges and schools. They've been lied to by the politicians that they were excited to vote for when they first started voting. And you think Gen X is skeptical. We've got nothing on this 20 something group.
Oh, I know. And they're just old enough. Yeah. They're just old enough to get out of college, and they're seeing the light. The dust is settling of some of the narrative that they've been taught. They are a very smart group of people. They've been raised from people like myself, where, you know, we've come from the telephone was only at home and it was in the kitchen on the wall, to we can now work from our phones and everything happens just in one little device. You know, they were raised by a very diverse generation. Now they've gone through the motions and they're coming out of college and they're like, well, damn, I will never be able to get what my parents have. And that's really generationally what we all do. We saw it with the yuppies in the 80s. They got their great education and then they bought their first house, which was very similar to the parents' house. They didn't start with a starter home like their parents did. They just jumped forward. So a lot of the younger generation, they're understanding, okay, all right, cool. I can start with a starter house. You can't even afford that now. When a starter house of a 2-3 bedroom house is $600,000 in the suburbs of any major city you can get a decent job in, they can't attain that. So it's gonna be a revolution. And I see it coming. And the more that we push this division in the country, the more it's coming for us.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's media and politicians. But, you know, if you got out and just talk to people, I think people would find we have a lot more in common than we have, opposed.
For sure.
And we've just been taught to live in our bubble with social media. That if somebody doesn't agree with us, then, well, you know, damn them. And that's a very wrong-headed approach. I mean, and, you know, for anybody else out there thinking about starting a small business, these young people are starting more small businesses than any other generation. And they're doing it with almost no money.
Yeah.
So talk about some people like learning the hard way and learning how to hustle. There's a lot of it out there, and they're clever and they're doing a lot of online things that, yeah, that they just sort of grew up in. That the rest of us like, huh? How do you market that? But they just know. But good for them. That, like I said, I think my nephew's generation will be the one that kind of puts the country sort of back on the right. You know, on a strong path. A capitalist, hustle, pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of mentality that we somehow lost.
Absolutely.
We had it way too easy. Yeah, an old saying like, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. Yes. That cycle. And it seems like it's coming true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have a message here from Ken Dodge. I want to share it with everybody. Everything is going up except the wages for the people on retirement and disability. It is almost impossible to survive, much less people that are living on minimum wage, working their fingers to the bone to provide for the family with little or nothing. Yes, it is. Yes. Most people in this country are feeling that. Even the ones that make a livable wage are beginning to feel that.
Yeah. And inflation, it's always been called the hidden tax. And it doesn't impact the 1%, the super rich, because they could care less. They're going to pay it. But everybody else, middle class and lower income and retirees living on fixed income, rent today is equivalent to what a mortgage used to be like 25 years ago.
Yes.
When you look at the percentage of your income it takes to pay it, it's a sad situation. But Yeah, if they get price controls in there, the only people they're hurting are like low income and minorities and middle class people. You're gonna separate that gap between the haves and have nots
Right.
wider than it's ever been.
Right. And that's just not a good recipe. But let's talk about the younger generation. As we age, a lot of us begin to create a will.
Mhm.
Now, at one point in time, I went on to Rocket Lawyer. I created a will. I signed it. I'm like, okay, I'm done. But I think I also had like another version of a will saved on my Dropbox somewhere, and this just not very organized about it. And you and I got into a discussion. So let's expand on this a little bit of wills and estate planning. What really
Yeah,
is the right way to do it? And what are some of the major pitfalls that we could be leaving behind if we don't do it the right way?
yeah. So we did a show once prior where we kind of brushed on wills, and the importance of a will. And I guess a couple of folks that had been watching the show eventually had emailed me, and they were like, "Okay, um, what exactly is a will, and what exactly is an estate plan, and how what questions when I'm going in to set one of these up with a lawyer do I need to ask, and what's a part of it, and what's a part of the estate plan?" So I wanted to maybe give some specifics. So if anybody's interested in this topic, grab a pen and a paper, and a piece of paper. I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of the difference. I'm going to tell you what you need to know that goes in each a will, and then what goes into an estate plan, and some of the things that you're going to maybe sit down at the table with your family and talk about questions that you'd need to bring up that's more unique to your situation. So, creating a will, it's the crucial thing that you need to do to make sure that your wishes are followed after you've passed away. And there I can give you a handful of reasons why it's important to have a will. One is it gives you control over your asset distribution. So whatever you've managed to save, whether it's IRAs or a 401k, your home, any assets that you've managed to accumulate, a will allows you to specify how those assets, property, money, personal things that you may have, heirlooms, how those things are going to be distributed to your heirs. Now, without a will, all those assets are going to be distributed according to state law. That's that word probate that you hear. Everything goes to probate. So when that has to go to a court, it gets parceled out according to state law. That may not be for your wishes. It may not be the way you wished things. You can tell your heirs what you want, but if there's no will to show it, then it's somebody's word against another and it goes to probate. That can be expensive. So you want to avoid that. Another reason, and thing to consider here for having a will is guardianship for minors, especially if you're young, you have young children or grandchildren. A will is going to let you designate who the guardian to care for them is going to be. I mean, you can ask somebody to be a godfather or godmother, but unless that's down in writing in a will, again, we go to court and the court decides based on state law. And every state's a little different. So what might happen in Virginia might be different than what happens in Georgia. So that's another reason to have one. So without a will, the courts decide who becomes the guardian, and that may not reflect your preferences. The court may put it to a guardian that maybe an alcoholic or something. You know what I mean? So that's not preferable. Um, here's this happens when people die all the time. You know how many times you've heard people arguing over somebody's estate? Families argue, I get this, I get that. Just minimize all the family disputes. Put it in writing in the will. That's another reason to have it. It's a legally valid way to reduce all these conflicts among your family members. You don't want people arguing over your grave. That's the last thing you want.
I've got a question about that. So, and this kind of touches back to my actual personal home. My mother has been writing little labels on the bottoms of things with people's names. Does that quantify legally as to who will get certain items?
No, because the question would come up: who wrote that and put the label on there? Maybe you wanted something, you went in and put your name on it. You know what I mean? So that could come up. So that's why she would need a will. And this kind of leads into the next point. Leads into what you're asking. It makes things more efficient. You can save a lot of money. You can settle your estate a lot faster with a will. And again, it's a lot less expensive. It's clear instructions of who gets what, and whatever's left for probate. It simplifies that probate process and reduces those administrative costs that come along with that. And here's another thing that more and more you see people doing, especially the older generation now that are passing. Part of their estates or savings or whatever they have their money, they choose to leave back to charitable organizations. St. Jude's may be something like, for example, my mother always sends, makes donations to St. Jude's. I would not be surprised if in her will there was something to leave a portion of it, a life insurance policy to a St. Jude's or a children's hospital or a charity that she's always supported, like Wounded Veterans of America or something like that. So, but it allows you to specify your contributions to make sure your legacy sort of lives on in the right way. So I'm going to give you a good example for, like, say you have an IRA. This is a very important thing people need to know. They have an IRA somewhere or a 401k, and you get to name a beneficiary on that. All right. So if you in your will have that same IRA you leave to someone else in your will, what you have on that beneficiary form trumps what you put in your will. So people need to understand that. So if you need to go back and change beneficiaries on those accounts, make sure you keep up to date with those. Because if you have a will that says one thing and then an account you didn't update says something else, like if you got divorced on an ex-husband and you forgot to change it, your kids, you know what I mean? I mean, this happens all the time. People forget this stuff. Or I had an old job and had an old 401k and I totally forgot about it. And my ex-husband 2 husbands ago got it. You know what I mean? So it's like that happens. It literally happens. So make sure those things are up to date, because what's on that form for the IRA, the beneficiary designation on those accounts, will trump what your will says. And you don't want them to conflict, because then all of a sudden that whole account goes to probate. So that's a big one. A lot of people forget that. So just, definitely remember that. So I would say half the people, if we had 100 people listening to the show, half of them would have that problem.
Wow.
That is no joke. Now, when it comes to an estate plan is different than a will, because a will is actually part of the estate plan. An estate plan is essential for, I guess, managing and protecting all of your assets combined, that your wishes are honored, you're minimizing the complications for your family, friends, and anybody else that you have that you're heiring to. And there's some things that you might need, like for an estate plan. One, this actually simplifies the asset distribution. So if your will, so you have an IRA and you decided not to list a beneficiary because your will has it, you might have one child getting 10%, another one getting 30, another one getting 10, you know what I mean? So based on their needs, an estate plan is where you kind of go in and start to, like, look at those details. You might have a nice house. You might have 3 children that are doing great, 2 that could use the help. Maybe you decide to leave the house to the 2 to sell and split the proceeds. And they can split it. However, in an estate plan, you can be very specific. One child might get 70%, the other might get 30% from the sale of the house. So those are some things that you need to think of. Here's a big one too. It's the healthcare and the end of life decisions. This is a big part of your estate plan, because it allows you to pick your specific preferences for medical care. I'll give you a great example. My father, when we knew he was terminal, he had what do you call those? The thing where you DNR, do not resuscitate.
Mm-hmm.
He did not want certain types of care, knowing he was at the end of his life that would prolong. He just didn't. He was tired. He just didn't want to lay there and suffer, right? And I totally got that.
Yeah.
So he had a DNR. So that's where you can use it in your estate planning. Those healthcare and end of life decisions, where you can be very specific, even if you're in bad health and you're lingering for a while. Who has the power of attorney, health power of attorney over you, and what kind of care you're willing to accept and what you're not. And that actually holds that person to a stringent standard that you've set that they can't deviate outside of. So, and again, protecting beneficiaries, especially minors. especially minors with dependent needs, like
Mm.
that may have Asperger's or autism or something like that. And you want to have something like that, somebody else managing their money for them, that you would list as like you're leaving it to, say little Johnny, but little Johnny's got Asperger's, but he's going to have a guardian that watches that will distribute X amount of money out to him every year to pay his bills, to make sure he's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get to actually be more specific and things like that. So the main components of an estate plan is only one part of it. It's the will. Another is a trust, setting up a trust, making sure you have your power of attorney. And if anybody's interested, keep jotting these down, because when you go in to see a lawyer, an estate planning attorney, you're going to want to bring all these topics up with them. The healthcare directives, which a living will is a little bit different. So you can do a living will, and that will actually be a part of that estate plan too. There's going to be different documentation for beneficiary designations on not just money and assets, but even little trinkets and heirlooms that you have around your house. Maybe you've had an interesting collection of something you want a certain grandkid to have. So that's going to be that. Then also there's guardianship designations, like for a minor. Then there's a letter of intent, even though they're not legally binding. But the letter of intent that's the document you provide, like extra guidance to the executor of the estate, about your beneficiaries, about the guardians, about your wishes, and any special instructions that you may have. Like, if you might have a child that's an alcoholic and you want them to be okay, so you're not going to be giving them the $200,000 life insurance at one time,
Right.
but they might get 10,000 a year, and that could be left in an account until that's dwindled down.
So it sounds like a person that needs to plan out their will and go through the estate planning would be handed a workbook to be able to work through before you meet with your attorney, or
Yeah, there are workbooks out there you can get on Amazon, things like that. And I mean, there are, like, I guess, workbooks. I keep a couple of them handy, but not on the estate planning, but like on retirement,
Mhm.
because a lot of people don't know what they're going to do in retirement. So I give them a workbook that has absolutely nothing to do with your finances, so that, because there's a lot to do in retirement. People get bored and they go back to work, or they get bored and put on 50 pounds. There's so many things that you can do. So I think there's a big part of life that people don't plan for. And I think that's where people get depressed when they're retired. Right. So, but there's a lot of things, but there are workbooks that are out there that people can look up. And if you're interested, I can maybe find a couple online and send you some links if you want to post them up for the show or something, if people are interested.
I did just a quick search, and it looks like, just a quick Google search for estate planning workbook, trust and will workbook, things like that. They do have them available. I was just curious. I haven't done it in so long, to be honest with you, that I need to update my will, because the last time that I met with an attorney, it was with my ex-husband. So things have changed. Kids have grown up and they're out of the house and they're on their own. So now it's sort of, what would they gain with
Yeah.
the loss of their parents? But and then there's this, it's kind of a new thing, of course it exploded with Dr. Kevorkian years ago, to where they would have a terminally ill patient. A lot of Kevorkian's patients were seniors, and they it wasn't quite an assisted suicide, but it was very close to it. He would basically just unhook you and you're going to pass away, because you're essentially very near or on life support.
Yeah.
So now flash forward to today, it has become very popular, especially in Canada, for the assisted suicide. Is that a different addendum to these? Like, how does that work?
I really don't know, because I know there's a lot of legal challenges here in the States, to
There
something like that. So you might be able to put that in your will, but I can't guarantee that's going to happen.
And you
You
can't
know?
guarantee that life insurance is going to pay out on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Um, yeah. Or even if you're on Medicare, would Medicare still cover the cost of somebody coming, because they're going to charge you, right? I mean, that's going to be a medical cost. I'm sure they wouldn't. I mean, I don't know, but there's so many legal challenges to stuff like that here in the States that I don't know if that would, unless some state law was passed that allowed somebody to do that. But then that would be interesting to see how the laws and the rules change from a medical standpoint, and the cost, and how that plays into, I don't know, insurance costs. I mean, if you had an insurance policy, would they pay out, or would they look at that like a suicide? You know,
Well, and so some insurance policies, they have the suicide clause so that you have to be current with your policy for something like 10 years or 15 years or something, and then it's no longer binding. And the only reason why I know that is because unfortunately there was a situation like that with one of our business partners.
oh no,
Yeah, and he was 6 months or a year past that clause. So it's sort of like he was just hanging on until he knew that it would pay out for his wife and his family. Um, and that was the first time I had ever heard of a clause like that. It seems like why would you either you cover it or you don't. And I think most of them just don't. But to have a clause like that just seems bizarre.
yeah, yeah, that's a sad situation. When somebody's terminal, and they don't want to suffer. I mean, you gotta pity on somebody like that, but then there's so many moral arguments, and it's very complicated. I hate that for somebody, though. I hate they went through that.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. I've there was a girl that she was here. I don't know if she had to go to Europe or not. She was a younger girl, and this had to be 2015 or so. Because I remember reading the article, and it was in a house that it was right before I moved to a different house. So that's kind of where I'm gauging the time from. But she was terminal. She had a brain tumor. She was young. She was young, and she was newly married. I want to say maybe not even 30. And she chose to do that. And it's wild. It's like they have this party of, hey, come say goodbye, like a bon voyage kind of party. And then,
Yeah,
they either take a prescription that a doctor has prescribed or a doctor's present. I don't know. But yeah, I was just thinking about that, and that just struck me, like, how does that work out financially?
I don't know. That's a tough situation. I mean, that's heartbreaking to that family too. Um, yeah, I mean, that's kind of a tough topic when you're talking about, like, when death comes up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just off the cuff here, I know a couple of clients of mine that are kind of getting near the end, and that's kind of a tough talk. It's like, how they want to, making sure that they have their will, and it's so hard to talk to somebody in such a, you want to be professional and give them the information and advice they need, but, like, you don't want to come across so robotic. But when you're talking to somebody like that, how do you not? But you don't want to come across like, so nervous about them and scared for them. It's because I've known these people for a long time, and you think about their kids and their spouses, and or their grandkids, and that's so tough.
It seems
Um,
like it would be tougher for you in your position as um, the professional, and probably less tough for them if I really had to take a look at it. Because I think if I was in that position and I was able to meet with you to make sure that everybody's going to be taken care of, that would bring me a sense of peace. And that would kind of be like a good meeting for me to be able
yeah,
to attend.
unfortunately, I had one of those today.
Yeah,
And it was a good meeting on their part, and
right.
uh, they got a lot of good. So they kind of know the direction they're going, and then I'm going to be there to kind of walk them through and help them, and
Mhm.
as things pass on to somebody else that they wanted to stay with me, because the other person trusted and was really happy the way things have turned out, and but it's one of those things. It's like, they're passing the baton, but then there's this patriarch or matriarch of a family, and it's like, wow. I mean, and they're ready. They're tired too, but they just want to make sure that things are left, appropriate. And hey, can you tell me a little bit about the game plan for who we're leaving this to, and
Yeah.
what can I just want to feel good before I go that we've done all this, and it's helpful, but it's a hard conversation to have, man. It's like when you walk out of there, you gosh, so deflated. You feel and I can imagine how the family feels, but they've been going through this for a while, and of course, the people when they're ready and they're not worried about death and they're just making sure things are taken care of. It's just so matter of fact to them. It's like, how can you be so so nonchalant? But maybe I'll be the way when I'm at that point too. But yeah, it's tough conversations for anybody to have, especially if a husband and wife, when you're talking about like, yeah, what somebody's going to do for the remaining years without
Right.
their right, they're their pal, they're ride or die. So, but anyway, you just wish the best for people, be there and help them out the best you can, and make good decisions, the best decision they can in the circumstance.
That's right.
But hopefully some of this stuff, if anybody's watching this, you got a few notes, and make sure that you have that. Maybe that'll help you have some questions when you go in to talk to your advisor or a estate planner or attorney. I know part of like my role in all this is the management of the money and the distribution and so forth. But there's so many other things that are in there that it's very personal. And I end up having discussions about every single one of these topics, healthcare and end of life and that sort of thing. But it's more of those just being a friend to them.
Yeah.
And live. But
yeah,
boy, I brought that down in a hurry, didn't I? I brought that mood down.
Well, like I had said, that's a hard appointment for you. It's a hard meeting for you. But you're bringing them such joy and not I need to stop using that word now that word's being like just infiltrated into society right now. We're campaigning on joy. So, sorry, there was a little throwback to the politics that's drove me nuts this week.
You are going to watch that tonight, or are you going to watch any of it tonight?
Yeah, I am going to watch that. I really do want to see just what Biden says, because right now, our media is saying that he has a scripted speech that he's going to give. It's going to be very similar to one that he's already given before. And I don't know that they're going to let him deviate off of it. But boy, oh boy, I'd want to.
I hope he does. I do. I want to know the truth of what happened. As a matter of fact, there was a quote I read in an article. Nancy Pelosi, I guess, had put a lot of pressure on him, and she said that she regretted that because she was always great friends with him. And somebody said, "Do you think your friendship could be mended?" She said, "I sure hope so." So apparently, he's not really happy with her.
I think he took a real beating over that.
Yeah.
I think it was a lot of his ride or dies that really pushed him to step away. And, as our politics always go, I also have that other question of how much does he get to walk away? Who's paying him, and how much is it to walk away from something that he was holding on to so dearly?
Yeah, I don't. One thing I never understood about people in DC, why they cling to power to their deathbed. I mean, look at John McCain.
Right.
Wouldn't give it up. What's her face out in California? I forget her name. Dianne Feinstein. I mean, they had to wheel her in, and she couldn't bring two sentences together. I just don't understand. Like, just retire and go spend some time with your family. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the people out there that are really going through mental challenges later in life, the Alzheimer's patients, the severe dementia patients, do they still vote?
I don't know.
I guess they still have the right to vote, right? But unless you have a paid person pushing your wheelchair up to your voting booth,
I don't know.
it's not right. A lot of this stuff that's going on is not right. But anyway,
No.
thank you so much, JC, for coming on and giving us, the meat and the potatoes of what's going on and being able to speak it so nicely that the people that are not in finance can grab onto what you're saying, and you define everything. And I really appreciate that. But for anybody that's interested in contacting you, can you tell us a little bit about Vistafront Partners and how to contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. We're investment advisors. We actually manage people's money portfolios, whether it's retirement accounts, non-retirement accounts, accounts they set up for their children. Also, those accounts that they set up, like in estate planning for distribution for those later years. VistaFrontPartners.com. You can check us out there. My email is jc@vistafrontpartners.com, and you can catch my phone number is 859-750-5881. And if you don't catch me, just leave a message, drop me a quick email. I will get back to you as quick as I can. And like I say this every show, I know I sound like a broken record. It doesn't cost a dime to have a conversation, but it might cost you a lot if you don't. When it comes to your long-term planning and investment and your finances. So take a few minutes and see where you stand.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Hope to see you on another show very soon.
Yeah, I'll be back anytime.
Okay, great. Thank you. I hope you have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Everybody, thank you so much for watching and commenting. We had a lot more action tonight, and I love it. I love to see what you're gaining from the show and the questions that you have for us. It really provides us with a great experience for all. As always, we are blessed. You are blessed. Mwah. I love you. And stay tuned for another great show. See you soon.